Is now a good time to buy? I think it's a phenomenal time to buy. I think next year interest rates are going to be higher and the cost of everything is going to be more. So if you're looking to buy either now or next year, I would buy now. If you're looking to buy now or 6 years from now, I'd still buy now because I think 6 years from now you're going to spend a shit ton of money in rent, and that's not going to get you anything. This is Laricy Live, and I'm your host, Matt Laricy, giving you unfiltered access to the world of real estate. We cover market trends, news, and give you the honest answers that will keep you ahead of the real estate game. Today, we are talking about Chicago's red-hot rental market. There's been a lot of things going on in the marketplace, and the rental market's been dictating a lot of what's happening. So we figured we'd focus, a little bit of a podcast on what's happening in the rental market because it's directly affecting the sales market. And I do think that this is going to change the market as a whole going into next year. So what trends am I seeing in the Chicago rental market right now? The market is red hot. Rents are up on average anywhere from 18 to 25%, depending on which neighborhood you're in. We're seeing a high amount of demand and low amount of inventory. Of course, it'll change in the next few months, but for the time being, it's still a very, very hot rental market. Another trend we're seeing is that a lot of people decided to not buy due to the raise of the interest rates, and we've seen another trend of people coming to the city but not believing in the city enough to buy, so they are renting, and these are all factors of why the rental market is so hot. Is the current rental market typical for Chicago? I mean, it is typical. It's just a little bit hotter than normal. I do think that, we're normally always a very hot rental market. I think the rise of the rates and people's uncertainty in Chicago itself, not only just like from a city standpoint, but from a safety and from an office standpoint, that people just aren't thinking they want to believe enough to actually, put money into the city. So they just say, hey, I'd rather overpay for a rental and see how things shake out next year because I'm too nervous to pull the trigger and buy something. Are rental prices increasing because of inflation? That is part of it. That is definitely part of what's happening here. Due to the rise of the cost of goods and everything else, these rental buildings have to make up for that money. And gas is like through to the roof. And all the other costs are, same with management and, employee fees, et cetera. And of course, who are they going to pass that, increase off to? They're going to pass it on to the consumer that's renting. And that's a big factor for why the rental prices are increasing. Can landlords charge whatever they want? Yeah, we don't have there's a terminology called rental caps. And in Chicago, that means that only a certain number of units can be rented. But in other states, like rental caps mean like there's a amount for how much you can raise your rent. Like in New York, they have this. So like you can only raise it so much a year. We do not have that. Technically speaking, somebody can raise it 100% if they want to. But it's rare for you to see that. But I have heard last year, going in this year, in the beginning of the year, like in like March, April standpoint, that people were raising rent as much as like 40 or 50%. And people were going crazy. But then again, we have to not be so knee-jerk and look at what happened is there was a lot of people who, they got in October of 2020 and they got to rental at like $1,600 and it was really like a $2,100 rental. But the landlord just, nobody was renting then. And then today, that rental's worth $2,500. So you're seeing like a huge increase. So those are the times when you see like huge increases. But overall, landlords are able to charge what they want, and we are seeing them increase. Are rental prices increasing everywhere? They are. There's not a single like scenario where I'm not seeing them go up. There's some aspects where I'm not seeing them go up as much, but there's a huge increase in demand. Is it normal for rental prices to increase every year? Typically, not by a lot, but they usually go up just a little bit. We saw a substantial growth solely because of the amount of money it went down in the pandemic years. Let's say the lockdown years. How are higher rental prices impacting the sales market? It's actually having a big impact because we've lost a lot of clients because they're like, hey, I'm just going to rent. So they went to go rent, and then like, holy crap, it's so expensive. And when I did my mortgage calculations for the places I was looking at, it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent when I factor my down payment. So yeah, I'm coming back. So people we lost are coming back, and then we're getting people who we've never even associated with that are telling us, hey, my parents can help me out and buy a place because I A, can't find a rental, and B, I can't stomach to spend this much. So it's definitely helping out the sales market from a buyer's perspective. It's also helping out a sales market, and this is a big reason why I want to do this, is because of the inventory levels. In 2020, you couldn't sell and you couldn't rent. So what was happening is inventory was building. That's why in some parts we got as high as 24 months, because there was just no movement. There's no action. Right now, if you can't sell your place, you're just like, screw it, I'll rent it. And when you rent it, it takes inventory off the market. And what that's doing is that's making inventory, specifically in like the heart of the city, like in that Gold Coast, River, North Shoreville, New East Side loop, drop. And it's because a lot of people just throw in the towel and decided to rent it. Are more sellers choosing to rent their homes for sale? We are seeing, again, like at this time last year, if a seller's like, hey, I can't sell, let's throw it up on the rental market. I was like, I mean, you can try. I mean, the rental market's not that good, but, you can rent it at a little bit of a discount. Today, we're like, yeah, if you can't sell for a price you like it, just rent it. You'll rent it in a day, and you'll get a phenomenal price. And we're having a lot of sellers decide to throw in the towel and rent it because now they're making money and they're not selling at a discount, and they'll try again next year when hopefully the sales market in their area improves. Are you seeing clients struggle to afford to live in the city? Not exactly. Not in the markets and clientele we work with. But I think we are going to start seeing that soon when the job market starts taking hits. So the reason we're not seeing most people struggle is because people are still making a lot of money, and although the stock market is doing bad, it's not like everybody's lost like every dollar they own, and we haven't seen mass layoffs. When the mass layoffs happening, that's when we're going to start seeing people struggling to live in the city. Are there rental shortages in Chicago right now? Yes, there is. A low amount of supply compared to the demand. How do you think these changing trends will impact Chicago's markets for the rest of the year? I think with the rental market being so hot, specifically in the heart of the city, which is now down to 6 months of inventory, which was at 12 months of inventory at this point last year and 24 months 2 years ago, I think we're going to get down to 3 to 4 months in the late fall, early winter markets, which is pretty much like Christmas season. And when we start off next year, we'll probably, I think we're realistically going to come on at a balanced market starting next year, which will be the first time we're balanced in almost 3 years. And at that point, you're going to have a good amount of demand coming back. And I think that's when we could finally see a tiny edge to sellers in 2023 in the heart of the city, which will be, again, something that will happen for the first time in 3 years. So while the rest of America is cooling off and their inventory is growing, the heart of the city is losing inventory, and they're losing it fast. And the rental market is a big contributor to that. Now, again, I'm not saying it's going to be a hardcore seller's market next year. I'm just saying it's not going to be as big of a buyer's market. And the sellers might have a teeny bit of control in the heart of the city for the first time. What are you hearing from other brokers about Chicago's hot rental market? I mean, the only time we really we're not like solely focused on rentals. Like, we got some of the guys that like help out renters find rentals. It's not like our primary focus. In fact, we only do it if somebody like reaches out to us. We don't actively market that, and we only rent properties for our own clients that we're currently working with. We don't actively go out to seek properties to rent. But when we do get them, when we do flip like something we were selling to a rental, it rents immediately. And the guys that do a lot of rentals, like they're solely just leasing agents, are calling me nonstop asking, am I going to move any of my condos to rentals? We've had quite a few agents reach out on our active listing saying like, hey, is your client interested in renting? Because I have somebody that's for it. So it is something that's big, and it's kind of changing the sales market, because with rentals being so hot, leasing brokers, who that's their primary focus, have to get creative and reach out to us, which is crazy because the heart of the city's had so difficult to sell recently. And with leasing brokers struggling to find inventory, it's kind of mind-boggling to think about that, because there's definitely enough inventory in the sales market. But the fact that the rental market's so slim shows you that the trends usually start as rentals and then move to sales. So again, this is another theory of mine why I think while the rest of America cool off, the heart of the city is actually going to be a pretty good market. And the stats and the trends are showing that we're going to be right on this. Is it more expensive to buy? Not really. In some aspects, entry-level stuff, it's actually cheaper to buy than it is to rent. But again, it depends on what you're looking at. Like if you're looking at a high-end luxury rental building, it's going to be more cheaper to buy than it is rent. If you're looking at like a very low-end, super old building, then it'll be cheaper to rent than it is going to be to buy. So it's all relative, but like generally speaking, it's really not a huge difference in Chicago to buy versus rent. What are you hearing from your sellers right now? My sellers in the outskirts, we'll call them. I know people get upset when I say that, but like, you know, the Lincoln Park, Logan Squares, things of that nature. They're kind of confused because their friends sold so fast in March and April, and they're not understanding why it's taking them a lot longer to sell. And the people in the heart of the city are still frustrated the stuff's not moving, but they're like, wow, it's nice to actually see some neighbors sell, and hopefully I'll sell and you do your job and sell it for me. But we are seeing the sellers start to grow frustrated, especially in markets that have been hardcore sellers markets for so long and are starting to turn to more, balanced, slight edge of buyers. I mean, I'd say like pretty much any market outside the heart of the downtown area is now balanced to slight edge of buyers, where that's been a hardcore sellers market all year. So there's definitely frustrations, and a lot of them are saying like, hey, is it time that we flip this to a rental? In which case we are, and it's renting right away. Will rents continue to increase at a high rate? No, because like we're pretty much peaked. By the time this comes out, we'll probably have already passed the peak of the hot rental season. Once you hit September, October, November, and December, like rents are going to drop a little bit. And Christmas season they'll drop substantially because it is tied to seasonality, and rentals are very seasonal. But then next year it'll go up again. But for the time being, the rental market will be hot, and I do think that the fall and early winter market for rentals will be hotter than normal. I don't think it's going to be like a hardcore on fire like it is now. I just think it's going to be a little bit better than it has been in years past. Is it getting more expensive to buy too? Not really. If anything, it's getting a little bit cheaper, especially in the outskirts, which has been hot. It's softening up. And in the heart of the city, our prices never really raised. So like we're pretty much still at an even standpoint there. Are there bidding wars within the rental market? I think it's pretty standard right now for a good rental to get more than 2 or 3 applications. I know I personally put on one of my own rentals that I always got like maybe $2,100 for. I think we ended up getting $2,400 with like 8 or 9 applications like within the first day. So there's a lot of stuff that's like that where it's just crazy of how many, like one of the guys here will put up a rental and it's under my name. So I'll get like 50 calls from it within hours of it getting posted. So it is pretty nuts how many people are bidding on this. How do you stay competitive as a seller in a hot rental market? You price your place appropriately. And worst case scenario, you can always flip it to a rental if your building allows it. Does your team handle rentals? Yep, we said that. There's 2 guys primarily on the team that handle representing the landlord. And then I have 2 people that handles people if they're looking to lease. But we honestly, we do a lot, like a real lot of our rentals representing landlords, like a ton. Mostly because we have, over 100 plus listings at a time pretty much. And a quarter of those won't sell, so we'll end up renting them. So you just look at the sheer volume we have that turn to rentals. We don't work with as many people looking to rent, just solely because we don't focus on that. And that's only of like a word of mouth or, one of my own clients decides to flip to a rental, but it's rare we help people looking to rent. Is it cheaper to buy right now since rents are higher? We talked about that. Are we actually just returning back to normal after the pandemic? I wouldn't say returning back to normal. I would say that like it's gotten a little bit hotter because we were returning back to normal like the very front part of the year, and when the rental market got like quote unquote hot, which would be normal. With the raise in the interest rates and the stock market taking a hit, people got a little bit more excited about renting because they were just like, hey, listen, I'm just too nervous. I think the market's gonna fail, and we're gonna see the prices fall off the deep end. So I'm more comfortable renting, and that all contributed to a hotter rental market. How does the rental application process work in Chicago? I mean, it's pretty basic. It's like most states. You fill out an application, they do a background check, credit check, and they either approve you or deny you. There's nothing really too complicated about it. What are you seeing with your own rental units? I'm actually seeing a lot of people asking me to stay, like almost like in a begging standpoint. Like normally what happens when I have a rent come up or a lease come up, my management company reaches out to me and I always say, hey, extend to them if they want to stay. And the way I operate is, and I know I could probably charge more money and make more money, but if I have a good tenant and I don't really hear much from them and they want to stay, I just keep the rate and just let them stay. To me, it's just, I like the cost of the unknown is not worth it to me. So if I could get an extra $200 a month, but now I got a tenant that sucks and trashes the place, or I got to, I also have to pay brokers because I'm not going to lease it out myself to rent it. It's kind of like a wash anyway. So, I normally tell the management company, reach out to them, see if they want to stay, offer them the same rate. Lately, my management company's been reaching out to me and saying like, hey, we know what you've told me, because I tell them this, like, don't reach out to me, just re-sign the lease if they want to sign it. I have that unwritten thing with them. I've just been getting email notifications of rental renewals. So I'm not even doing anything. They're just automatically renewing. And then my management company sends me an email saying like, hey, so-and-so's properties, that one's been renewed. And that's happened on almost all my properties except for one. So personally, it's been working out pretty well. And it's kind of funny because even as a landlord myself, during the pandemic, and they allowed that rent or the eviction moratorium where people you couldn't evict people. Most investors, myself including, were a little nervous about, well, what's going to happen, because you're sitting on these huge portfolio of real estate, and if people don't pay rent anymore and you don't make any money, I mean that's a tough pill to swallow on money you got to take down every month that you're not getting back. And I mean, honestly, that's why a lot of landlords were upset about this whole eviction moratorium, because like it's not like anybody's paying my bills. So if I'm leasing out my property to somebody else and then they don't pay it, like I'm the one that's screwed. So now I have to find a way to pay for these. So most investors were very nervous by this because in all honesty, you just didn't know what can happen and how much money you're going to lose. I mean, you could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars because somebody decided to create a law. So it's funny that you go from being super nervous about what can happen to now all of a sudden where it's like, wow, we're a totally other end of the extreme where I don't even have to worry about these things getting rented because I know it's going to be so hot. As a landlord, I used to always think, and this is something I told all my clients, that no matter what happens, people are going to want to live in cities. That's what I always said. And when the pandemic hit, it was the first time, pretty much I think in our lifetime since the Spanish flu, where people said that they don't want to live in cities. Now, as I've said a million times on these podcasts, I don't think that's a long-term thinking, and we're starting to see that change. So it's been about 2.5 years, and now cities are starting to flourish. And I think all big cities across the country have taken a hit, and now we're going to start seeing growth in our areas that have been hit so hard. When our landlords are allowed to raise their pricings when a lease comes up, you can't just raise it halfway through. Once a lease comes up, you can offer your tenant a new lease. You can offer whatever price you want to back to them, or they could leave and you could raise it to whatever price you want to somebody new. Are you surprised by the hot rental market right now? I'm not. We talked about the rental market coming back. I think I'm surprised with how much some of these things are going for, but we did anticipate a really hot rental market. It's a big thing I talked about last year, is wait till the rental market comes back, because then the sales market's going to really come roaring back. And our theory was that people would want to come back to cities but be a little bit nervous for that first year or two, and that's why we thought the rental market was hot, and that's literally exactly what we're seeing. What do higher rents mean for the sales markets? I mean, in all honesty, it's good because investors will look at long-term approach. Okay, like if I buy this and my exit strategy is I can't sell, what can I rent for? And if they see a good rental price, well, then it makes sense and I'll buy. A lot of people are always thinking doomsday scenario. Like if I can't sell, what's my options? If the option's a good price on the rental, they'll buy it. If the price of everything keeps going up, how will people afford to live? That's going to be a serious problem. That's part of inflation. It's going to be an issue. Honestly, in the markets we work in, unfortunately, it's mostly like a high net worth area, so it's nothing like we really have to. We're not really going to see that much in, but I think we are going to see a lot of that once once the job market starts taking a hit. Again, it's been a very long time that the employee has had the power over the employer. But when the boss, which is why his name is the boss, gets the control back in these offices, and the employees start losing their jobs because the cost of goods and cost of inflation goes up, that's when you're going to start seeing people's affordability levels get really hurt. And what's going to happen there? I mean, that's impossible to predict. How are you setting expectations for sellers right now? I mean, it depends on where you're selling. If you're selling a single family home in like Lincoln Park, I'm like, listen, the market's not where it was, If I'm selling a condo in River North, I'm like, hey, listen, the market still sucks. It just doesn't suck as bad as it was. So again, it's price point relative to where it's at, and I just tell them the facts. And I'm sure most people interview 3 or 4 people, and one of the biggest reasons we don't get listings is we get interviewed, and I go in there telling them, just facts and basics and what I can do to help. And then you get Johnny Smith who walks in and tells them everything they want to hear, and some people just want to hear what they want to hear. They don't want to hear your opinion or stats. They just want to hear their own opinion told back to them. And we don't operate that way. And it costs us business, but it also gets us a lot of business. It's now a good time to buy. I think it's a phenomenal time to buy. I think next year interest rates are going to be higher, and the cost of everything is going to be more. So if you're looking to buy either now or next year, I would buy now. If you're looking to buy now or 6 years from now, I'd still buy now, because I think 6 years from now you're going to spend a shit ton of money in rent, and that's not going to get you anything. I always think now is a good time to buy. Well, let me take that back. If you're buying in the suburbs, something like that might be a different story. But for our markets, I always think now is a good time to buy. What can we expect to see for the rest of the year in Chicago real estate market? I think we can expect to see the market get more balanced to a slight edge to buyers. That's what happens every single year. I think we're going to start seeing more and more people come back to the marketplace. I think we're going to start seeing the rental market continue to be strong. And I think the big thing to kind of watch out for is this out-of-state international market comeback. It's huge. We're seeing a lot of international buyers, specifically in the heart of the city, which can be a big reason why the market's going to be good. And a good thing that the rental market's so hot is international buyers need to have an exit plan. And the fact that they know that the market's hot and they see what they can rent them for, it pushes them to become buyers, which is good for the market. That's all we got for you today, guys. Thanks for listening to Laricy Live.